Team up in 10 minutes. It's going to be tough, but we're going to go for it. First of all, we have build analysis. It allows you to look at the top 7 cards of your deck and grab 2 trainers you find there. This can be really cool for getting things like Beast Rings, Electro Powers, maybe even some unidentified fossils as well. Erica's Hospitality is a supporter that you can only play if it's one of a 5-card hand or lower, but it allows you to draw a card for every one of your opponent's Pokemon in play, pretty much similar to Steven's advice that we saw back in the EX era, and it's probably going to be very strong. Ingo and Emmett is another supporter. It allows you to look at the top card of your deck, discard your hand, and you can choose to either draw from the top 5 or the bottom 5 of your deck. You get that little bit of info which really helps out make decisions and can effectively allow you to dig for 6 cards if you're looking for one exact piece. Pokemon Communication is a reprint as well. This is going to be really good for evolving decks, maybe even Zoroark for Tapu Lele odds. You're going to have a way better chance of getting your early Elms going, which is always good. Also very nice for Lost March because you can get your Jump Bluffs back in the deck. Judge's Whistle allows you to simply draw a card, which is already very good for aggressive decks, but it also has the VS Seeker effect for getting back Judges as well, so it can be nice for getting back that one good disruption card that we currently have in the game. Jirachi is also somewhat of a reprint. You're allowed to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, grab a trainer, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Then it goes to sleep. You don't really care about the sleep because you have Guzmas and you have a skateboard that can get around this thanks to its nice 1 retreat cost. It's probably going to see play in a lot of the shrine-based decks, some non-evolving aggressive decks. So really going to love this Jirachi. Pidgeotto is really cool. It's got 60 hit points on a stage 1, so it fits that category of being Elm searchable, which is very nice. And I feel that could fit into some decks just because it is good for consistency, seeing as though you're allowed to look at the top 2 cards of your deck every turn, put one of them into your hand, and then put the other to the bottom of your deck. So it's similar to effects that we've had on Mushana, Uxie Level X before, and just the fact that it's searchable via Elm means that I have good hopes for it. Onto the lightning stuff. This is probably the most exciting things we get from the team up set. Zapdos is a very potent, aggressive, non-GX. It does 10 damage, but 70 more if it's come into the active that turn, similar to a Golisopod GX's first impression. It also has a nice fighting resistance, so it may find its way into lightning decks in general just because of that nice type coverage, but it may stand on its own as a nice shrine-based deck with a plethora of attackers, or could also just be, a bit part player in some other lightning stuff. Tapu Koko Prism Star can simply throw himself into the Lost Zone. Then you choose 2 of your bench Pokemon and you're allowed to attach a lightning energy from your discard pile to each of them. Pretty sick accelerator. Could be really good for a Turbo Rayquaza deck, or also something like the Pikachu Zekrom GX deck, which is the next card I'll talk about. Obviously, tag teams are a new mechanic from Team Up. They do give up 3 prize cards when they're being knocked out, but they normally are big, tanky, basic Pokemon from what we've seen so far. Pikachu Zekrom's no exception. 240. It has 2 attacks, trying to set himself up by attaching energy from your deck and then using Tag Bolt effectively to knock out a GX in the active and also a Tapu Lele on their bench if you have a whopping 6 energy attached to yourself. Electric Charger can flip 2 coins and grab back Electro Powers and put them back into your deck for some extra damage buffs, which are pretty important now that we have these lightning type attackers. There's more tanking options with all these other Tag Team GX Pokemon. Celebi and Venusaur has a plethora of supports. Not only is its own attack very awkward, burning, confusing, and poisoning at the same time for some nice protection, but you already have things like Aether Paradise, Gardenia, a bunch of Shaymins that you can use on your bench, not to mention his GX attack, which fully heals himself, whilst also doing a Lysander's Trump card effect to reset all those healing cards back into your deck. There's also the Muscle Pads item card, which gives your guys with 4 retreat cost 50 more hit points. So this Celebi and this Magikarp Warlord are going to be absolutely huge threats that can just sit there at times. Magikarp Warlord may not even see play because of its attacks. It may just be its hit points alone. 300 is absurd, and it might be a new Pokemon that we use in stall decks just to not... or just sort of to deny knockouts, basically. If you do want to try and attack with him, we can use things like Quagsire, Aqua Patch, and there's a handful of other things, maybe a Blastoise I'll talk about later, but overall I foresee him being more of just a vanilla card that we throw into the active just to get hits. However, there is a Mr. Mime in this set, which can deny Acerola, and that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. Zoroark decks may not appreciate it, although they do usually play Muck anyway, but it's going to be very good for denying these stall decks from just spamming Acerola turn by turn. There's lots of dark support in this set. Dangerous Drill is an item card that is effectively a Field Blower and an Enhanced Hammer in the same card, the cost of which is to discard a dark Pokemon from your hand. I feel like this could easily go into something like a Darkrai Weavile, a Zoroark Weavile deck, and it's going to probably push that archetype. Also, we have Nanu. It's a support card which lets you put a basic Pokemon, a basic dark Pokemon from your discard pile onto your board in exchange for any Pokemon that's currently there, and then you gain all like the effects and the amount of turns in play it's been. So effectively you can change a Lele for a Zorua, turn it into a Zoroark that turn, and effectively you've taken out easy 2 prizes for the opponent and then put in an extra Zoroark on your board, which is really good for bench management and can also do some pretty wacky plays, setting up new attackers out of nowhere. There's also a Black Market Prism Star, which is great for dark Pokemon. Any of them which have a dark energy also attached to them only give up 1 less prize. So this could be used alongside, again, something like a Weavile in a Zoroark deck and really just be pretty disgusting to deal with. Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star is one for the Fairy archetypes, but may find its way into all sorts of different decks. It effectively says that every Pokemon except Fairies have 1 colorless more in their attack cost. This could be pretty annoying for mill decks to abuse, so that you really can't ever attack them, especially because they have Lusamine Loop and they can make sure that they win the stadium war in a lot of situations. Also, even things like Zoroark Control could use this because they can just use a Rangaroo with a DCE and they're not effective by the stadium, but they're also denying the opponent from attacking. It may just end up in things like Gardevoir and Gramble because they're Fairy Pokemon and they don't get hurt by it, so it's going to be in all sorts of different decks. There's an Absol, which is a Dark-type basic and increases the retreat cost of other basics on your opponent's side of the field by 1. This could be a great way to deny something like the Jirachi Escape Board combo that we've already mentioned, but he'll probably also find his way into stall decks simply because you can bring up things like Tapu Lele and now it has a DC retreat cost, and some decks just aren't playing DCE, so you can sometimes trap even a Tapu Lele in this day and age, which is a pretty scary concept. Speaking of mill, there is a new Moltres in the set which can discard cards from your opponent's deck based on how many fire energy you discard from itself. You're going to try and reload this with things like counter energies and Mad Cargo Engine. It could be pretty funky, and we've seen Rhyperior work in the past, so I have high hopes for it. Persian discards your opponent's hand down to 4 cards, and you get to choose the ones by looking at their hand as well. So this could be actually used to disrupt mill players by getting rid of their Lusamine Loop. Could be annoying as well against Zoroark decks trying to build combos. There's 2 stage 1s. There's a Alolan Muck, which looks at the top 6 cards of your opponent's deck and discards all their items there. This could be good for accelerating a Trash Launch win condition, or also could just be disruption in general. There's also a non-GX Zoroark. It's similar to something like a Vespiquen-based attack where you're trying to get Pokemon in your discard pile. It does 20 times the amount that you throw in there, up to 200 damage, but it is for a Dark and DC, so it's a little bit expensive. Next up, we have some interesting metal stuff. The Tool Drop attack is back, this time on a Stage 1 Doublade. We have lots of support in the Tool formation for lots of metals in particular. We have Frying Pan, and we also have this new Metal Goggles, which also reduces 30 damage done by attacks, and also is unaffected by things like Decidueye's ability here and there, so that can also be some nice protection for you. There's a new Jasmine supporter, which is also great for metal types. It just searches for 1 metal, but if you're going second and it's your first turn, you get to search your deck for 5 metal Pokemon, so really insane if you can lay this out. There's also a Bishop, which is a nice counter card to things like Gardevoir and Alolan Ninetales GX, which are both very popular. May sneak into decks just because of Ditto and things like Unit Energy here and there. Maybe some sort of Garbodor deck could be playing it if they play units, but there also could be a deck based around it as well with Shrine. There's a few other new non-GX decks on the block. Gyarados is a pretty awkward attack, trying to look at the top 7 cards of your deck and looking for as many water energies as you can find there, trying to hit big 1-hit KOs. Really awkward engine that's going to probably play around 30 plus energy cards to make work, but it does hit ridiculous numbers. Nidoqueen allows you to search your deck once per turn for a Pokemon, put it straight into your hand that's not on GX or EX, so that can really help set up this guy, seeing as though it is a stage 2. And it does 10 plus 50 for each of your evolved bench Pokemon as well, so it's trying to build a really, really big board and really punish people with 1-hit KOs. Aerodactyl's an awkward stage 1 because it is, of course, evolving from a fossil, but it can do 90 plus 90 more if there's no GXs or EXs on your side of the field, so again, hitting really big numbers here. There's lots more tag teams in the set. These are all ones that are probably going to synergize most with Malamar, where you throw them into the discard pile and copy those attack costs. I think Horror House GX is definitely one that we could look at, seeing as though Bell of Silence has done so well. This is just Omega Bell of Silence, basically. The Eevee Snorlax is also very interesting because it's colorless, so there could be all sorts of different acceleration that can get him going. Megaton Friends lets you draw up to 10 cards whilst doing 210, which is pretty silly. And Dump Truck Press does perfect numbers for Stage 1 and 2 GX Pokemon for the most part. There's also a bunch of fossils in here. The Kabutops and Omastar are both trying to disrupt people. Omastar stops trainer cards if you have less bench Pokemon in play. Kabutops stops supporters when it's in the active. Both of them are kind of clunky and probably too slow for standard, though, in my opinion. There's a new Lycanroc as well, which can remove an energy from the opponent's active Pokemon, and this could be pretty annoying, especially because it's got good typing to deal with Zoroark in general, seeing as though it can do 120 for just fighting DCE. And from there, we have all sorts of energy accelerators. Blastoise is essentially Once per turn, you can do a max elixir from your deck. The Charizard allows you to attach energies to himself for big damage output, but I don't think it's good enough or fast enough in the format now that we're getting some new non-GX decks anyway. Incineroar can also charge himself up with Scar Charge every turn and try and do a max potion spam, but I again think his attacks are a little bit subpar. Oh, we didn't quite get there. Oh man, I'm going to carry on just because I'm on a roll and this is too hard to fit into 10 minutes. Ninetales can discard 2 Fire Energy cards from your hand, and you get to do a Lysander effect. Shaman allows you to do 30 times the number of all your basic energies in play, so it's probably going to go into Red Quasar decks and maybe a handful of others that can abuse lots of energy acceleration. Articuno could be going into Naganadel Quagsire because it has the sort of Groudon effect where you can protect all your water Pokemon in the back from things like Lysander, or Guzma I should be saying, whilst also doing 70 damage and moving energy off itself, so you can retain those energies and build up big attackers. And then there's the Viridian Forest Stadium card, which allows you to discard a card from your hand every turn and search your deck for an energy card. And I wasn't just in time. I was just a little bit late, but that's the best I can do. I've had 2 attempts now, and I'm not going to get any closer than that, I don't think. Too many cards in this set, but I hope you did enjoy this video. Hope you enjoyed the attempt to get this in under 10 minutes. I really did try to go as fast as I could, but let me know what you think about the best cards. I tried to keep it as concise as I could, but once again, there's just too many interesting things to cover, and that's it for today, guys. Hope you did enjoy, and yeah, next time I'll try and get it into 10 minutes. Cheers.